Hey, welcome to the video about using imagery and sensory detail. One thing that we call this sometimes is exploding the moment. Often the best narratives focus on a short period of time and work to develop the details, emotions, and significance of that specific moment. One strategy for this is to explode an important moment as if it's happening in slow motion. On the other hand, unimportant moments should speed the story up and keep keep the reader moving along and interested. If there's a part in the narrative that gives important background but is not truly a significant moment, the writing should be sped up there. Here's what I want you all to focus on: strategies for slowing and developing your writing. Give a lot of specific sensory detail. When we talk about sensory detail, we're talking about things like taste, touch, smell, sound, and sight, right? Those five senses that we all have. And really good writing makes good use of imagery or sensory detail. We want to be able to see and smell and taste and touch and feel the things that our characters are feeling. That's what really strong writing does. So that's what you're going to be assessed on here. One way to do this is to linger on important descriptions. You can use similes and metaphors to develop them, and use these as opportunities to delve into the thoughts of the person you're writing about and tell us what they're thinking at that time. So we're going to look at a handful of examples here of passages that were really boring and then became much more interesting when we exploded that moment and used lots of sensory detail. Here's our first boring moment. The lamp fell and broke into a million pieces. My mother walked into the room and surveyed the damage. She looked all around and could see the big mess my brother and I had made, and I knew I was in trouble. Okay, that's boring. It's a play-by-play report of what happened. Let's add some sensory detail, some sights, some sounds. Let's make it more interesting. Let's see. I caught the basketball as it ricocheted off the table, sending glass flying all throughout the room. So right there, I want you to see how we're using language like ricocheted and flying, right? Glass flying is a powerful visual thing, right? That's imagery right there. The crash was so loud, it was like two cars colliding. That sentence uses a metaphor, right, or a simile in this case, to compare the sound to a car accident. Suddenly, you can hear the chaos and the violence in this moment. Suddenly, my mother swooped in from the kitchen and looked around the room. The white pieces of her favorite lamp were strewn all across the unfinished wood floor. You can imagine that wood floor, right? Not polished, not beautiful. It's an unfinished floor. The lampshade had fallen onto my brother's youngest head, my youngest brother's head. He stood there wearing it like a giant sombrero pulled down over his eyes. He was very still, but I was certain I could hear his small whisperings echoing inside the shade. So there's our sound, right? That's another good use of imagery there, the echoing of whispers inside a lampshade. To her right, Mom could see the electric cord stretch across the cheap brown table. Large red chunks of ceramic clung to the wire. Look at how we're using color there. I watched her eyes slowly survey the entire room until her glare rested on me. The orange basketball I held in my hands was too small to hide behind, but way too large to make disappear. I held it in front of me like a big sign, saying, "Why, yes, I'm guilty." I swallowed hard and began to click through the list of excuses filed away in my 9-year-old brain. Okay, so this passage, right? It's got color, orange basketball, large red chunks. It's got sound. A crash so loud it was like two cars colliding. Um, let's see. It's got really sort of exciting verbs to describe motion for that visual imagery, like glass flying, swooped in from the kitchen. Now, it doesn't have any taste or smell in it, right? And that's okay. Maybe yours will. Would love to see some taste and smell in yours, but this is still doing a pretty good job of using imagery. If we move on down to the second example here, this one focuses really a lot on color in the imagery. And in the sake of, in the interest of time, I'm not going to read this one aloud. But if you would like to pause here and take a look at the example, please go ahead and do so. Okay. All right. I'm going to sign off here and keep it under 5 minutes for you. Going to be looking in your writing for taste, sound, sight, smell, and touch, right? Those 5 sensory details and vivid descriptive language in that imagery. Okay. Happy writing.